Warhammer 40,000 Darktide is not too far off from its release date, and after the closed beta this previous week or so, a lot of people have been wondering about the weapon variety for the game. They're really worried about some of the things that they've seen from the beta. They want to see more of the weapons. Well, you're in luck because a Redditor, Mr. Melonzo, has gone ahead and compiled a lot of the character insignias that were in the files for the, well, they're necessarily in the files, but in the closed beta if you just kind of got yourself into like a weird little bugged loophole. So what we're going to go through here today are some of the really cool range weapons, and then we're going to go through some of the really cool melee weapons, and then we're going to close the video out just kind of my general thoughts on weapon variety, maybe some things that I didn't see from this that they might have mentioned in the dev diary. As an example would be the heavy bolter, which actually might be a heavy stub gun depending on how you're looking at it. We're going to post a link to the Reddit post, so you can go ahead and take a look at that if you so wish. But for those of you that want to kind of jump ahead to maybe the melee weapons or the range weapons, you can use the chapters in both the timeline and the description to just jump ahead to wherever you want. As always, guys, if you end up enjoying the video, please don't forget to like, comment, and or subscribe. Each one of those things helps me out in a huge way. Let's get started here on the leaked weapon variety in Warhammer 40,000 Darktide. We're going to go pretty low tech on this. I'm just going to pretty much show off the actual just screenshots that we've gotten from that post. I was going to cut everything up, but I was like, nah, this is kind of mainly just a video essay anyway. So we can start off here by kind of taking a look at a lot of the lasgun variations, which I think are pretty exciting here. We open up with just dutiful, and that's just the name that the game has put there. That's not the name of the gun. It's just like, hey, this is part of the insignia that you can unlock by doing certain things. And these character insignias are how people are kind of deducing that, hey, this thing must be in the game because here's this character insignia. And you'll see too from this picture, like if you look right over here, this is just an empty box. So we don't know what that could actually symbolize. Some things might even be placeholders. Who really knows? But the big thing here is if you kind of just look through this, you can see a lot of variations on lasgun, starting with the Cantrail pattern lasgun. This is just this typical one that you would see with Acadian shock troop. And it's probably the one that you will see starting out in the game. I would expect that this is the most plentiful of ones. But then we kind of start to go through an evolution here. We're going to a rifleman version of the lasgun. And I'm not necessarily 100% sure who this could be. I had originally thought maybe it's the Vostroyan Firstborn because it has a little bit more of an ornate look, but probably not. Because these are kind of themed after the Imperial Guard regiments, which is pretty cool. Because if you jump over here into the Skyborn, you get one for the Elysian drop troops. I almost said shock troops, but the Elysian drop troops, which have a different, more compact version of the lasgun. It's supposed to be a bullpup design, meaning that there's an actual hand piece. What's it called? A place to put your hand right next to the breech load or whatever it's called. It's kind of like a jerry-rigged version of a bullpup design in this picture. There's some old pictures from lore that kind of present a way better bullpup design lasgun. So this is kind of an interesting take, but I think this is definitely kind of a callback to the Elysian drop troops. And I am not good on describing what a bullpup is, so I apologize on that. Moving into our next one, though, we get Desertborn, which is definitely going to be pulling us into a more of a Mars pattern lasgun. This is the same lasgun that you'd be seeing with the Tallarn Desert Raiders, and more of a carbine design as well. So a little bit of a different shift here. Moving into Trenchborn, we get the Lucius pattern, the Lucius number 98, and this is the same one that we would get with the Death Corps of Krieg. So you see these things are kind of modeled after different Imperial Guard regiments, which I think is a really cool way to add some flavor. Now, I don't know anything about stats. I don't know if, say, maybe the Skyborn one is better in a CQB environment, or maybe the Trenchborn one has got a better kind of special attack where you hit them with the butt of the gun. I have no idea, but I would hope that it maybe does have a little bit of a skew or change on things because it's supposed to fit kind of the way that that Imperial Guard regiment works. Moving into the Sure Shot, we get especially what I want to talk about because the Sure Shot has a much longer barrel, and that's supposed to be more of a sniper rifle. It's called a long las. So I would expect this to have some sort of characteristics that fall in line with that, or at least I would hope. So I wonder if this maybe has to do with different sites on there, different special attacks, different statistics when it maybe comes to finesse or range or whatever it is, penetration, as we've seen for some of the actual stats on melee weapons. We've seen like penetration and the such. I wonder if that will be the same thing here. And again, worth kind of just taking a look at some of the other pictures you can see. We'll be going through most of these. I'm not touching on stuff like purity seals and the such, but I'm going to mainly zone in on the weapons here, of course. But we also go into Firstborn, which I think obviously is a callback to the Vostroyan Firstborn, but the Firstborn weaponry is supposed to be very ornate and finely crafted. This looks like a Kalashnikov, so I think they're, oh, well, we'll make that parallel. But it's supposed to have like curved handles and ornate filigrees and all sorts of like over-the-top stuff, because the Vostroyan Firstborn, even though they are an Imperial Guard regiment that you would think would take advantage of mass production, a lot of their las guns are handed down. There's a lot of just kind of legacy behind them, very ornate looking cool things. I've covered all of these things in a bunch of Imperial Guard regiments lore videos you can find linked in the upper right hand corner if you so wish. But moving forward here, we get into a new weapon, the plasma gun, which is really cool. It's cool to see this because we can also see the Godwin pattern bolter. So we can see some more standard fare Imperial issue weaponry coming to the fore. And I think it's pretty safe to say with a lot of the las guns, we could expect them on the veteran guardsman, right? The veteran sharpshooter. With the Godwin pattern bolter, though, I could see this on the zealot. I could see it on the sharpshooter, maybe even the psyker. I could see a lot of these weapons being used on multiple classes, which I think is actually really fun and really cool. Moving into this, we get the multi-melta, which I hope just has a shit ton of penetration. It just does a lot of damage to armor. You can hear Roman in the background just shaking his butt like furious. But we also get the last pistol. This is a really simple one, but no one had it, right? You didn't really have that last pistol at the beginning of the game. Wait, maybe you did. No, you didn't. Because you had the auto pistol, and then you had a basically a hand cannon for your psyker. So this is, I think, just your standard fare last pistol. And what I'm not going into with all this is that even though we're seeing these individual items, I'm curious to see what their combinations are going to look like. What does a las pistol and a chainsword or a power sword look like? What are those combinations? How do they exist? What kind of classes can take advantage of them? Can maybe a zealot have the las pistol and a power sword? Or maybe only a veteran guardsman can have a las pistol and a power sword? Typically the way that would work, it would make a little bit more sense, I would suppose. But everyone's a convict here, right? We're not going by the standard kind of, oh, well, you know what? You've earned this rank, so this rank has access to this weaponry. It's not like that right here, right? So I'm very curious to see what these kind of combinations look like. We have the Purifier for an actual flamer, which we do know is on the Zealot, but I'm wondering if we will see any kind of hand flamers or anything like that. Anything of the sort that is more, well, one-handed in its use case, right? Like I'd love to see a chainsword and hand flamer kind of combination to get some real damage done. Then you can cover yourself in red power armor and call yourself a Blood Angel. But point blank for just some shotgun action. And then we're starting to get into some big heavy stuff here. The Ripper, we've already seen this in the game, but just kind of wanted to show it off again. And then we get the Noisemaker and the big guns. So these two are definitely going to fall into the Ogren, right? And the big guns, you get your heavy stubba, which we already see activated on one of the NPCs, one of the special units. But then that's the ground shakers, what we would see in the grenade fists that the Ogrins would use. And I'm really, really excited to see how those things really kind of come to the fore and how they're really used. Used? That's not even a word. How they're really used and how they can really do a ton of destruction. I would imagine would probably have a lot of horde clearing capability, not a lot of high penetration capability, and perhaps a slow reload. So seeing those things kind of used in the Ogren is pretty nifty, because the Ogren's got abilities to do, oh, you know, I've got this one basically converted grenade launcher that just shoots one single high caliber shell. Well, it just has a ton of penetration. You can use it to just kind of down a special when necessary. So having these varieties of range weapons for the Ogryn and what they might possibly mean as far as horde clearing or special destroying or whatever it is going to be really exciting to see how those combinations kind of come to the fore. But this kind of brings us back to the front of the list here. We've covered the majority of the range weapons I wanted to get into. The stuff I didn't cover was things that we've either already seen, we already know about, whatever it is. So let's transition now into some melee weapons. Now, with the discussion on melee weapons, we get some pretty cool stuff. I hate that we had the closed beta this far away from launch. We all know that closed beta kind of early access is coming. What does it say? November 17th. But like, now that I've had a taste, I wish to partake more. I mean, thinks my lady doth protest too much. Moving into some of these melee weapons, we have the Riposte, which gives us a very Commissar looking weapon, right? Just a standard little cutlass. And I really like this to maybe open up that possibility of getting a Commissar. I don't really think that would, it doesn't fit, but I can dream. So one thing I kind of noticed from these images is that this, I think, denotes a one-handed weapon. And we're going to go through the one-handed weapons first. I would love to see some variations of mixing and matching these, right? Like a cutlass and a power maul or something of the sort. I would love to see that kind of combination that we've gotten in Vermintide 2 with all those sorts of kind of cool melee combinations. Or again, maybe throwing in a range weapon like we get with Saltspire, right? How he's got the rapier and he can just kind of do that. His special attack is that quick shot with the flintlock pistol. I'd love to see something along those lines for maybe the Zealot or the Psyker, who tend to be, I think, probably a little bit more, not necessarily melee oriented, but I think like the veteran sharpshooter's ability, I think brings him more into a range slot versus the other two. Can make a little bit more sense in melee. But cutting edge, we just simply get another sword here. I think probably both of them have similar statistics, but we move further into the Basher. Now, this could simply be a weapon that could be used for the Ogryn as well as maybe the Zealot or another human. And that's a fun combination, or fun thing to think about too, a fun speculation thing to think about is who can use what on these weapons? Because I think that the Ogryn has his mace right here, but this might be another one. And I'm thinking of the model too. The model had a very similar looking little mace like this, so that could be the case. This could be a powerized version. It doesn't necessarily look like there's any kind of connecting portions. Usually it's like that really cool little hose or whatever filament that kind of empowers that blade. It could be a power maul, but I think this is our power maul, and I think it's kind of going to be sick to see this as a one-handed weapon. Using this in conjunction with possibly another one or a range weapon is going to be very fun. And that brings us into just your standard power sword. Again, a really sweet little option here. And this kind of brings us then to another interesting weapon, a force or power axe, probably for the Psyker of some sort, some way, shape, or form. We've seen a bunch of different axe variations. They don't necessarily have a lot of this coupling around, going around the haft into the actual head of the axe here. So perhaps a force and or power axe, which could be another pretty interesting little innovation. But this brings us to the Blood Rush, which is a one-handed chain axe. Now, again, the reason I'm thinking and calling this one-handed is, and you can see the next picture we're about to get into is this guy right here. And this, you can see the haft, you can see the whole entire handle, which you're going to be holding. For this next picture, the two-handed chain axe, very similar to the one that the Mauler uses. I would absolutely love to see a Zealot or a Veteran Guardsman subclass that is kind of like a Mauler, right? That has a big like two-handed chain axe, has a ton of armor, and can kind of wade through the competition. That isn't the Ogryn, right? The Ogryn's your typical meat shield. So I would love to see a subclass for both the Ogryn and for another character that kind of defies their current set, right? The Ogryn's got that meat shield capability to jump in the front line. I'd love to see a subclass that is more, hey, you're heavy stubba, you're in the background, your grenade launchers, you're in the background, you're using those ranged weapons, kind of like a heavy ordnance type character. And same thing here with the Guardsman. You're usually a ranged character. Well, now I want you to have this two-handed chain axe, and I want you to go to town on something. I totally glossed over the Bulwark, which is the Ogryn shield, but we know that that's coming, and it's kind of cool just to see, get that full confirmation, but that is in here somewhere. But moving into the Brutal, a two-handed power maul of some sort, I would assume, right? It has that kind of typical look, the little coupling that kind of brings the power into the actual head of it. a two-handed force or power sword here, and another one. So I think this is probably the force sword, and that previous one was a power sword. It could also just be different aesthetics on the sword, and they could both be two-handed force and or power swords. I'm not 100% sure. It says sanctioned, so I'm assuming it's sanctioned psyker, something of that sort. Force sword, kind of bring those things kind of back around and in line together. And we have a two-handed chain sword, also known as the Eviscerator. Boom. That is, I was stoked to see this. In general, like, I think I shared a lot of people's sentiment that I was very kind of worried about the weapon variety. So let's bring it now into my closing thoughts on everything and enjoy this lovely gameplay video of us playing Darktide from the beta. So I am really excited, right, for all these things, to see these different patterns of lasgun, to see all these different varieties of weapons, and to wonder too what classes can take advantage of them. Can all humans use pretty much the same armament? Can Ogrins really much use only their Ogrin? I mean, that goes without saying. But I guess the bigger question are all of the weapons linked to subclass or main class and subclass, or are they linked to just, hey, the humans in general can use flamers? Doesn't matter if you're a psyker, if you're a zealot, or if you are a guardsman. So I'm really curious to see how those will kind of shake out. Now, they did mention, like I said, a heavy bolter in one of the dev diaries or dev videos some time ago. He was talking about he talked about the Ogrin using a stubber though, so I'm not really sure if he knew what he was talking about in that moment. And which is another great weapon I just like to see. Maybe you put the Ogrin using that, because I don't necessarily know if that's going to be something that's necessarily feasible, because we do know that a hot shot lasgun is probably going to be present too, because we see the specials that already have it, and we've seen concept art with it. So I'm hoping that is something that we will also be seeing alongside this. But again, this brings a lot of excitement to me. It's cool to see the level of weapon variety, and this is only, of course, a bit of it, right? We don't know what some of these blanked out images are, if some of them are placeholders, if there's other things that we just completely missed or weren't able to actually tap into. There are plenty of places you can go with speculation, and I'm really excited to see what that full breadth of weapons looks like come the actual launch of the game, or at least that early access beta. November 17th again, I think it is. Then the launch later that very same month. But I'm really excited. Go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Are you excited for this level of weapon variety? Would you like to see more things? Like for instance, Jesus, I'm having a rough time talking today. For instance, I didn't bring up, or they didn't show off any of the shot las. I would love to see shot las, which is basically a shotgun, an automatic shotgun in the form of a las gun. I think that would be a sick weapon. It's a little redundant, right, with a trench gun, but still, I would love to just kind of see it from just kind of the cool standpoint of seeing a bunch of las bolts shooting out of your gun. So it'll be interesting to see what the full breadth of weapons are. And if there's anything I missed in this, or you said, hey, you know, you totally glossed over this one, this is a really cool point that someone maybe pointed out, whatever it is, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. If you found more leaks or whatever that I, again, missed, by all means, let me know, guys. If you post a link, it gets sent to spam, so I'd have to approve it. So post away and I'll find it when I can. But as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, all that fun action. I got a 40K lore video coming out for you bros that I know are excited to see more 40K lore videos on my channel, and you shall have it. But have a good one and take care.